Hi, I'm Denise Pepper from Making It. Today I'm going to show you how to make a cuddly snake pillow. By the time I've cut up my segments of different coloured fabrics and stitch it together, it ends up being around about 2 meters long. And the reason for that, it means the kids can wear it around or drape it across their bed. So I'm going to clear this table and we're going to get straight into it. So for the first step, you'll need to cut out lots of components of 120 and 220 in each colour of the fabric. So because there's so much cutting, I actually found it so much easier just to create a paper template. And you'll see on the paper template, you have a 120 and a 220. Easy, folded in half like this. Then I decided that it's so much easier to get your fabric, which is 800 wide, fold it to 400 like this. And then you can just get your paper template, lay that on top of the fabric with your scale, with your ruler, your metal ruler, and then just run it through with your roller cutter to cut each component. Then if you do your 220, it's the same, just unfold it, place it on the fabric, lay it down, run your roller through and cut your fabrics. You can see here are all my components. The next step is the great fun part where you lay them all out and place them, pin them together and then start stitching. So now you've completed all your cutting and you have all your components in two of each colour of 120 and 220. I start laying them out on the table and I may spend a bit of time just shifting and moving the colours around until I get what I think is a pattern design that I really like. And then I start pinning those together and get ready for sewing them. So, it really depends. You can do your 120s and 120 together, especially if you're for the tail. I actually decided to do the 120s together so that it has more of a stripy effect. And then when it gets close to the head, you can go the larger. It's just all a matter of you deciding how you would like these to look. So now I've kind of got a few in place here. So I actually now start pinning them with the inside facing together and allowing a 10mm seam line when you start sewing. So just pin them all together like this. And then you just start stitching through all those. In the end, you end up with a very large piece of fabric that's with all the striped components. Okay, I think we're just about ready to sew. I'll show you how this strip looks once it's all stitched together and sewn together. So this is what you end up with once it's all stitched together. You can see I've had a play with placement. There's no wrong and right on how you place these. What I did do, which is actually something that's a little bit handy as well, is I actually pressed the seams flat. And the reason why you do that is because you're going to match up every single seam line. And it's really important you do match that up so that it looks very uniform. So fold it in half, start matching up your seam lines. You can see at the end, I've actually given a stripy tail. So I've sewn, like I said before, my 120s and my 120s together, just because you're going to trim the tail freehand a little bit later on. So line up all your seams, get your pins, pin those in place so that they all match. So this is going to be the head section and that will be the tail section. By the time I finish stitching this together, it'll be like a big tube. But that's where you can be creative. You can decide how you really want this to look. The fatter it is, I think, the more fun for the kids to sort of climb on and roll around on, throw onto their bed, throw onto the floor, sit on it. I'm going to pull the pins down this end right down here because I know I'm going to trim a fair bit off of this tail. So I'm going to at least do it, over halfway towards the back with my pins. So this is where you can be creative as you like. There's no wrong or right method to this. So I obviously want the head section to be where there's most of the bulk. So I won't take anything away from that. So if I start down here at the tail, because I want to thin the tail and move into a fatter body, I actually just can freehand draw where I'm going to remove this, taper it out to the fatter section, and there's my tail section. So now I'm just trimming all this excess away up to a tapered point here. Okay, remove this because you no longer need this. I'm just going to take these pins out and place them back in here onto the fabric. Now I'm ready to get the sewing machine and sew all along this seam line. But the most important part before you start doing that is always to remember you need an opening because you need to turn this inside out and you need to put the stuffing in. So I always mark a panel, one of these 220 panels, double stitch at each end so it doesn't come undone, and then when you finish you will hand stitch that. So leave a panel so that you can put your stuffing in. Now I've trimmed the shape of my body with tapering down at the tail. I'm going to start stitching and I'll start at the tail. So I enclose the ends of the tail. I stitch all the way into that panel where I'm leaving the opening, which is a 220 panel, double stitch back, jump over to the other side, double stitch so it doesn't come undone, and then zip all the way to the end, but don't close off the other end because we need to attach the head after we've stitched this together. Just flattening out one of the seams because it's kind of twisted over. Just always double check your sewing too. Make sure that everything is going okay. So this is where I'm going to leave my opening. So when you come to the opening, what I do is I go forward and I put it in reverse just to double stitch back so that it doesn't come undone. Move over to the other side, leave that opening because that's my opening to add my stuffing, and turn it inside out. Again, forward, double stitch back. That way your stitching doesn't come undone, and you will hand stitch that opening later on. Okay, that's the body stitched together. Now I'm going to move on to the head component and then showing you how to attach that to the body. So now you've completed the body and you've stitched it together and you've left that seam opening, and you know which end is the head because it's the wider end. For my design, I decided to use the darker grey as the head just to give that bit of a contrast of a head. This is a 220 panel. I just fold this in half, stitch up this seam back to back, and then I end up with a piece like this. Centralize your seam into this panel, and then I just got my chalk and I've just drawn a bit of an arrow, half circle shape like this to create the head. Then I would cut that excess away. Don't forget to leave 10 millimeters for your seam. Now you can see by that shape, it looks like a snake's head. So I open up this flap where the side seam is, the middle seam, place the tongue in there. And what I found is easy, you can pin it. I used the glue gun just to tack a tiny little bit in place so you're not competing with pins. That's all you need. That will now hold that zip while I stitch the zip in place. I'm just going to pin it together just to make stitching everything so much easier. Now I'm going to stitch around this half circle here as part of the head. Opening up your seams to make sure they're nice and flat. When you start to get into the zip, there is a little bit of a bulky part of the zip. You just need to take your time and be very gentle to make sure you catch the ends of the zip. Just take it slow because you don't want to break your needle. You want to make sure it's still in place. Finished. So now what you should have is your zip in place so that when you turn it inside out, there's your zip sticking out of the snake's head. So the good part about this zip is that you can be open. You know, it's kind of very nice interactive part of the snake pillow. The next part is I need to now attach the head to the body. We always talk about seams matching up, inside out again. Make sure you match your back seams up so they're nice and neat. If there is a little bit of excess, you can just have a little bit of puckering, and that's actually okay. Again, pinning everything together. Work your way around. because your seams will be the under part of the body. Remember, put your pins a little bit further back so you've got room to sew. So now I'm going to stitch that all the way around. Back stitch. So now you've completed all your sewing on the sewing machine. You've attached your head, you've attached your zip, you've sewn all your panels, and you left a 220 panel open. Now's the time to start adding your stuffing into your snake. Getting the stuffing and pushing it right down into the tail. Make it fairly compact because I like the idea that it's nice and firm. You know, it gives it something for them to sit on. So now I'm just going to proceed by putting in all the stuffing. And this is where it's actually important that you actually notice how your seams all match up really nicely. And that's why I said it's really important that you do match your seams up, you pin them. So I used a whole 1 kilo bag to fill this. And then when you've got the tail, you'll just start on the head section. Get a handful and push it right down into that head section. Just give them a little bit of a fluff out. The seams are the underbelly of your snake. Turn him over. Now it's time to actually think about eyes. I showed you 2 different sizes, from the 75 mil to the 50 mil. That's completely up to you of which size you want. I'm going to go the great big ones this time, just to have a little bit of fun and play. If you're concerned about the plastic eyes, you could always draw them in with a Posca pen if you don't want to have detachable eyes. So when you're gluing, is make a seam all the way around the edge of the eye. Spread it out. Okay, placement, I'm going to put one here. Press it down nice and firm so that it's attached really well. Look at where you're going to place your next one, about there. Oh, the eyes are great, they're so big. Just look at your placement, put it on, press it down, allow the glue to dry. And there your eyes in place with this great big tongue. They're actually a really good proportion with the tongue. You know, I've decided I like the tail end to be embellished because there's so much going on with the head. And I glue gun these on as well. So just a little bit of glue at the beginning. Start at your seam. Attach. Glue all the way around and then start attaching your embellishments. And cut it so that it actually joins together on the underbelly like this. Nice and neat. Once you've glued those all in place, then the last final job you have to do is just to hand stitch, or you can use your glue gun, this opening that you left open for your stuffing. And then your snake is completed. This was so much fun making this snake. The good part about it, it's really open to your interpretation. All the materials are from Spotlight. The color variation's completely up to you. The widths of the stripes are up to you. Great Christmas presents, birthday presents. The kids really enjoy it. Even get the kids to help you make this. So just have fun and enjoy it.